So here we go, everybody. Let's talk about the best daily speed trainer in the Nike family between the following two shoes: the Nike Tempo Next Percent and the Nike Vomero 16. Let's get into it. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Filip, Latocha, and as you can already guess by the title and the little intro there, we're going to be talking about two Nike family shoes and comparing which one would be the better daily speed trainer in that specific criteria, of course. So, of course, as mentioned before, the Tempo Next Percent and the Vomero 16 are up on deck for this comparison. So, before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed to the channel and following the content, thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Strava, all sorts of social medias down below. Without further ado, let's put the specs up right here for both shoes respectively, and let's just jump right into it. I guess we'll start off with seniority here, which is going to be obviously the Tempo Next Percent. So, as many of you have probably seen in one of my previous videos from like a week or two ago, Tempo Next Percent is back in my shoe lineup, and I was kind of originally on the fence of if I wanted it to come back, mostly because on my treadmill workouts, there was a lot of weird sensations in my left foot in regards to like the air zoom pockets and the ball of my foot. But after taking it outside, some of those issues did end up clearing up. So this might be just a repetitive treadmill issue kind of thing, but whatever. That's not the point here. So let's break down some of the general specs of the Tempo Next Percent without getting into too much detail, and we'll start talking about, all the good stuff. So, of course, everybody knows at this point in time, the shoe in my size, and about 8.5, does weigh about 9.2, 9.3 ounces, which does put it at about 260 grams on average. The shoe itself is technically banned for elites on the racing field because of the following specs. In the forefoot, it is a 36 millimeter raise, and then in the heel, it's about a 46 millimeter raise, which is already exceeding the 40 millimeter limit. And then this gives it a 10 millimeter offset, which gives it, of course, the high heel daily trainer forefoot emphasis strike for the shoe that I think a lot of us are accustomed to in most daily trainers we use. And I guess the fun fact with the 10 millimeter offset is because of the way our foot is striking in the shoe, it is encouraging more calf, activation, because it's not really leaning so much more in this midfoot area for more of that like thigh to knee area. It is leaning more for like that ankle flexion to kind of start, pulling in the calf and recruiting those calf tendons for that strike. So that's kind of the deal here. And of course, the unique portions of this shoe is that it is using ZoomX and React rubber foam across the shoe. The areas that are ZoomX are basically just this mid piece right here, the one that's kind of like jaded, and also here in the forefoot area. And then the React foam is, of course, the colored foam in this area and in this heel area, both of which, the ZoomX in this case gives it kind of that pop. It's a very soft, very explosive foam that works in tandem with the nylon plate that is, sandwiched in between both layers of foam that are working with the air zoom pockets to give you kind of this, explosive rebound off the ground with the technologies involved with the shoe. And then, of course, the React is supposed to just provide that stability, sort of that reactiveness per se, to give you a stable ride as best as possible with a shoe of this build. So that's kind of what's going on with the rubber technologies here in the bottom. And of course, we've already discussed the upper many times. It is a very soft upper, and the material is not too tough also in this heel area as well, but it's supposed to be kind of a minimalist speed trainer with a lot of moving parts in, the midsole and outsole of the shoe itself. So with that in mind, let's get into the Vomero 16. So most of you know this is like the newest daily trainer in my lineup, and it's got a lot of cool things going on. One of those, of course, well, once we get into general specs, I guess we'll address it. So, general specs right off the bat. This is about 10.2 ounces, which does leave it at about, I'd say, 290 grams average. And that puts it a little bit on the heavier side, or more of the average side of like most of the daily trainers that I've used. And in the forefoot, we are dealing with about 18 millimeters in the forefoot and about something like 28 to 29.5 in the heel. But the ultimate point here is that there is about a 10 millimeter offset in the shoe, once again, giving it that high heel feel with more emphasis on the toe box area to be, and like the midfoot ball area of your foot to be the striking point of the shoe. The reason for that, of course, is because there is an air zoom pocket in the center of the shoe here that is just, literally looks like a little Tide Pod in there, and it's basically just, compressing and decompressing as you hit the ground and rebound accordingly. Some other good stuff, of course, it is using ZoomX on the inside of the shoe here, and it is pretty much surrounded with some, EVA React foam all the way across to give it more of some, stability and some responsiveness in that area. But the ZoomX is designed to give this shoe as much speed as possible when you're, just running with it and just trying to have your daily run in that case. So obviously some differentiations between the Tempo Next Percent and the Vomero is somewhat obviously the way the upper is built. In this case, the heel collar area has more plush, more pillow, and that's, it's not a bad thing if you're looking for a lot of comfort. You just have to play around with it a few times to get the lock right, because you're going to have a lot of air space when you're, initially tying the shoe, and then you start moving, you're running, and your ankle is like shifting in the shoe a little bit. Then you have to kind of stop and then tie it down again just to make sure you squeeze all the air out of it and get as much comfort as possible without losing any sort of comfort or creating any sort of discomfort in regards to how the tongue has shifted on, the top portion of your foot. Also on this shoe as featured is this plastic rubber heel guard, which also gives it a lot more stability and a bit of an anchor point while you're running, which I think is important in the long run, literally speaking. So you're, as you're fatiguing, you're not so much losing the way your foot is striking on the ground, and you're kind of keeping it pretty much consistent, and you've got that stability overall. So now we get to the point where we start comparing and contrasting the shoes overall. So let's talk about similarities first and foremost. Obviously, the 10mm offset in both shoes to give it that high heel effect is a good thing for both shoes, and it does encourage the respective technologies to be used in this case, which again, they do share partially the same technologies in terms of rebound, where they are using air zoom pockets. One is obviously a lot more visible than the other, but the technologies are in tandem working the same. And again, it is a combination of ZoomX and React foam working to rebound off the air zoom pocket in both shoes. Just of course, one is hidden underneath, this EVA rubber, and the other one is two air zoom pockets on two sides of the shoes working with a nylon plate and working, of course, with the frontal rubber area to give you that rebound effect. Now, the difference with the technologies, as I mentioned, is, there's two air zoom pockets, and it's using a nylon, carbon plate in this shoe for that extra speed, whereas this one does not have a carbon plate and is a lot softer and is a lot more durable from that front. Also, the construction of the ZoomX and React on this particular shoe is also different, because it is mostly ZoomX in like the bottom area of your foot, not the shoe, just your foot, and then it's surrounded by the React to give it the stability all around. The best way, I guess, to think about it is like, think of the ZoomX Invincible, but try to like cut off some of the ZoomX, but then add some React all the way around it to give it some more stability than the Invincible essentially had. And then, of course, in this shoe, the React and the ZoomX are built in a way that I think they're strategically placed for getting as much speed as possible out of the shoe, which I personally really enjoy, because, of course, when I am doing this more midfoot to like slightly toe striking area in the shoe, having the ZoomX at the very bottom layer is super cool with the air zoom pockets, because it allows for more sink rather than having React, which will kind of rebound a little bit quicker and not sink nearly as much, which in turn may not utilize the air zoom pockets nearly as much as I would like them to in a personal preference. And the React here in the forefoot area allows you not to sink too hard into the carbon plate, but because it's more responsive and it's a lot more dense, it's going to push into that nylon plate a lot more to give you that air zoom pocket rebound that you're obviously looking for. So the construction of the foam between both shoes, obviously very different. Upper construction, also very different. One, of course, is obviously they're both very similar in terms of using mesh, but the combination of mesh is different all the way across. There's a lot more textile use in, of course, the Vomero 16 for the shoelace style, and this is just one of Nike's like signature selections in that case of using, this outward textile and then tying it in through that specific material in order to lock down your foot. And then, of course, with more comfort in the heel collar and this plastic guard on the heel, what Nike has ultimately done with this shoe is not only allow it to be fast, but allow it to be consistently fast. And that is something you would enjoy in a distance run, specifically with the Vomero 16. Now, when we go into the Tempo Next percent, the upper is a lot more minimalist than the Vomero 16. Not a whole lot going on. There is, of course, like a lot of very thin mesh. So if you do get water in this shoe, it's going to just go right through. There's very little material to block it other than like this toe box area and maybe like some in the heel, but even then, not very tough. And there's not so much textile inside the shoe rather than inside. That kind of creates like this, I guess, textile cage to hold your foot down. But other than that, that's all you've got in terms of protecting your foot from the elements outside. And as a result, what happens is I compare the shoe to being like a stripped down racing vehicle, whereas this one is kind of more of a shoe with a little bit more extra parts for comfort for the driver, but as a result weighs just a little bit more and may have maybe not the greatest advantage in terms of speed versus, of course, the Tempo Next percent. So I guess this comes down to our final thoughts of the shoes. So the reason this specific comparison even happened was that while I bought the Vomero 16 and after I took it on my first run, I did come up to this idea like, man, do I actually really need the Tempo Next percent in this case if I already have this like fast daily trainer that I can probably punch out a 20-mile run in and still feel good? And the answer to that is like, you technically don't. I could technically now replace this Tempo Next percent if I wanted to, but I'm not for like one specific reason, and that is because the Tempo Next percent is still faster and the shoe has very targeted runs I can still do in between, you know, like if I was going to do a mile run up to about 8 to 10 miles. That's like probably a really good range for the Tempo Next percent actually, for me to have a comfortable run without experiencing too much fatigue. And what I mean by fatigue is not so much like my personal fatigue when I'm running, but also the shoe build and the shoe foam also will experience some fatigue. And after a while, the shoe just won't be able to carry around with you. And you'll start seeing that like as you're getting tired, the shoe is not nearly as responsive as if you were, you know, at like 100% while you started your run. And the Tempo Next percent is just simply faster because of its build, and as a result, when I need it to go fast for like a tempo or threshold session, this shoe is gonna be there. But if I need to go like a little bit slower, the shoe is obviously not gonna be there, and I do have like the more recovery daily trainer in my lineup for that case. But that being said, the Tempo Next percent is definitely staying because of how targeted it is to like a mid-distance to shorter distance run where I need some more speed workouts. The Vomero, however, is going to be that shoe where I need the speed and the endurance in order to handle a much longer run, or just any distance for that matter. And obviously, like I mentioned, the Vomero seems to have a reputation for being that long distance runner shoe, and obviously with the Air Zoom Pocket technology and the comfort that's built in the shoe, you can go for a very long time at a very consistently fast pace, just not a faster pace. That's the major difference here, obviously. Anything else that I would like to add to that? I think, yeah, overall, that's the major differences. I guess like price point at this time of the filming of the video, this is $150, this is $200, so you can kind of tell that you are buying a little bit more speed with this shoe overall, but you are kind of losing a little bit of the life in this shoe so far because these Air Zoom Pockets tend to pop pretty early from a lot of user experience, and you know, personally myself, I know that as well. Whereas the Vomero 16, too soon to tell how the lifespan of the shoe is. Based on the pegs already at like almost 50 miles, we've got a long ways to go. So that's kind of the other thing with price points. So that's my thought on both shoes right now and why they stay in my lineup together. So if you guys have any other questions, comments, or concerns in the video, you know, just link them in the comments below. I will definitely try to answer whatever I can. But I think I'm going to end the video here. So tell me which one you like better. If you use both shoes, do you use this one as your daily trainer? Do you use the Vomero 16 as your speed trainer? You know, let me know in the comments, and we'll just kind of, you know, talk from there. So knowledge is power, fellas and ladies. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.